Today, we're going to talk about something a lot of people face but nobody really talks about. Why good, ordinary managers are getting absolutely crushed between corporate demands and the reality of their jobs. And we're going to look at one man's brilliant strategy for survival.
So let's start with this statement right here. He is not a hero. The person at the center of our story today isn't winning awards. His face isn't going to be in any newspapers. But if he vanished tomorrow, his entire department would probably grind to a halt. So who is this guy?
Well, think of him as the invisible cog. You know, the kind of person who makes the entire machine run smoothly, but you never really see them. Let's build a quick profile of this everyman manager.
Okay, so he's in his early 50s. He's a middle manager at a mid-sized manufacturing company. He's not at the very top calling the shots, and he's not on the assembly line. He is smack dab in the middle of everything.
And his world is incredibly high stakes. He's juggling things like procurement, quality control, for auto parts, medical devices, the kind of stuff where one tiny mistake could get a multi-million-dollar contract killed, just like that. He's constantly caught between headquarters, his suppliers, and his clients. The pressure is just nonstop.
And what about his personal life? Well, it's about as standard as it gets, which is exactly why he can't just walk away. He's got a wife who works part-time, kids in university and high school, and of course, a mortgage on a house out in the suburbs. He knows deep down the company isn't going to save him if things go south, so quitting, that's just not an option on the table.
And this right here brings us to the main event, the corporate squeeze. This is that moment where the beautiful, clean numbers from headquarters come crashing down into the messy, complicated reality of the factory floor. So let me ask you, just think about it for a second. How do you respond when your boss hands you a target that feels completely, utterly impossible? Do you argue back? Do you just kind of put your head down and hope for the best? Well, our manager, he does something totally different.
And here's the fundamental problem, right? You've got two different languages being spoken. On one side, you have the language of HQ. It's all about these clean, elegant KPIs. On the other side, you have the messy reality. You can't just magically reduce the defect rate when your most experienced veterans just retired, or boost productivity when you're in the middle of a tricky equipment update. HQ's numbers just don't see that context, and it creates a system that's basically designed to break people.
So how did he fight back? This is the cool part. Not with emotions, not with arguments, but with a counter-analysis. His strategy was all about translation. He learned how to turn the reality of the factory floor into the language that the powerful people upstairs actually understand. And he came up with this brilliantly simple, repeatable three-step method. Step 1. For any new target, he creates 3 possible scenarios. Step 2. He attaches real, concrete, quantifiable risk to each of those scenarios. And finally, Step 3. He translates that reality into the only language headquarters truly speaks: numbers.
Okay, check this out. Here's how it works in the real world. Instead of just saying, "That's impossible, we can't do this," he walks into the meeting and presents a table just like this. He'll say, "Okay, scenario A, if we force this new KPI, our projections show the defect rate will spike and we risk losing a 50 million yen contract. Then scenario B, a more phased, realistic approach, will have some manageable costs for reinspection." See what he did? He completely shifted the conversation from, "Are you going to obey me?" to, "Which of these financial risks is the company willing to accept?" It's genius.
So, what happened? What was the result of this silent battle that was fought with spreadsheets instead of shouting matches? Well, it was a quiet victory, but a victory for sure. 0. That is the most important number in this entire story. That's how many times he raised his voice. That's how many times he said, "That's impossible." He never once made it emotional. He just presented the cold, hard data.
And the results? They were real. They actually got an exemption from that uniform KPI. Their goals were changed to be more realistic, more phased in. They got to keep some of their autonomy on the ground. But really, the most important thing they won? They were not crushed. And if you've ever worked in a big company, you know that just surviving, that is a massive win.
So let's try and distill all of this down into a kind of code for survival. What are the lessons we can actually take away from this unbreakable, very quiet, but very effective cog in the machine?
Okay, his first piece of advice, the one he gives all his junior colleagues, is incredibly simple but powerful. Leave your emotions outside the conference room. Anger, frustration. He says they're useless in that setting. Your data, your numbers, that's your real weapon.
And his second rule is just as critical. If you argue, always bring an alternative plan. In other words,
Don't just be the person who says no. Be the person who says, no, that won't work, but here are 3 other ways we could do this, and here are the risks and costs for each one. That simple shift makes you a problem solver, not just another obstacle.
And when you put it all together, this really redefines what resistance can even mean inside a company. It's not about shouting. It's not about refusing to do work. It's about becoming a translator. It's about taking the messy, complex truth of what you do every day and converting it into the language of risk, finance, and legal liability. A language that the people in power literally cannot ignore.
So we'll end on this thought. Resistance isn't always a loud protest or a big rebellion. Sometimes the most powerful and effective form of resistance is just quiet translation. So the question you should probably ask yourself is, what is the language my reality needs to be translated into so that the right people will finally listen?